Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of my weekly Roadrunner devlogs. Last week, I primarily focused on building out some FPS mechanics, and this week, I kind of switched gears and focused more on survival mechanics and some of the tools and systems that I would need to build out a survival game. There were quite a few additions, so I'm just going to give a brief overview of them now. The first thing I added was a new set of food and water mechanics, something that I think is essential to almost any survival game. I then went through and reworked the item system with the solid design principles in mind, and this ended up making the item system far more robust and extendable. I also worked on the inventory system a bit, making sure that I could add backpacks and vehicle inventories. I then added vehicles with inventories that are synced across multiplayer. I continued by importing my procedural terrain system and making some crucial improvements to it. And finally, I used all these new features to start building out some biomes and landmarks. Hopefully I didn't forget anything there, but now we're just going to go through that list of additions, and I'm going to show you what they look like in-game and what I think is so cool about them. Also, I promise it's worth sticking around till the end of the video to check out this procedural terrain generation system. I made some pretty cool improvements to it, but what I'm most proud of is that you can now add as many biomes as you'd like without changing a single line of code. So right now I'm just in the landmark that you could see me building in the background of the video. It's not anywhere near finished yet, but I just wanted to come here to show you the new food and water mechanics. They're pretty classic to almost any survival game, so I'll keep this short. But yeah, you can eat some apples to gain food and water, maybe drink some water to gain just water. If you run out of food or water, you'll start to lose health, and you can use things like these pills or this med kit to regain health. Here I'll use the pills. But you can see when I used the pills, my food and water went down, which I thought kind of makes sense. So let's have some more food and water. So now I just wanted to talk about my rework of the item system to use more of the solid design principles and how that improved the item system. And also I'll talk a little bit about the new item spawner object I added. This part might get a little boring, so I'm just going to leave a time lapse of me building that landmark in the corner in case you don't want to look at my code. Okay, so I'll be honest, I am a little new to the solid design principles, so don't get mad if I get some of this wrong, but I'm going to try and explain them and how I use them as best I can. So the first thing I did was replace the gun controller, which could only interface with gun items, with this usable item controller, which can interface with just about any usable item. This is a great example of the Liskov substitution principle, I think, because it allows me to interface with any of the derived object classes without the script knowing what kind of object it's interacting with. One of the big ideas that I took away from reading about the solid design principles was that I should have more classes that are more specific in what they do and more specific in the ways they can be extended, rather than fewer classes that are more general and have more responsibilities. So I implemented that in my code by just creating a lot of these abstract classes, such as this usable item, which describes any item that can be used, and it has some methods that should apply to a lot of different types of usable items. That extends into this abstract class, which is a consumable item that just defines any item that is consumed once it's used. So what I thought was interesting about this is that I could have just taken this code from the consumable item and put it directly in the stat effect item class. But then if I wanted to create objects like grenades that also get consumed when they're used, I'd have to extend them from stat effect item and make them affect the player's stats as well. So by making this intermediate abstract class, I have more ways that I could extend it in the future. Okay, enough coding. Let me show you this item spawner. I am pretty proud of this tool, so the first thing I'm going to do is just show you how it can be used to create an item spawner in-game. The first thing we have to do is create an empty game object and maybe give it a name. Then all you need to add to this empty item is an item spawn zone component and a box collider. Make sure the box collider is set to trigger, and then just add some items for it to spawn. I'm going to set the spawn time fairly low, just for demonstration purposes. And then the last thing you need to do is make sure that you have a game object with the item spawner script attached. This will spawn the items over the network. Oh, and I almost forgot, set the bounds of your box collider. So here we should get some items spawning over the street right here. Let's see if that works in game. And would you look at that? We've got a collection of beans, water bottles, and apples spawning over the street. Okay, so we're already about 6 minutes in, but I promise you there's a lot more interesting stuff to come. Next up, I just wanted to talk about the new inventory system and these vehicles. So these two additions kind of come in a package, so you still have the basic inventory that you had before. You can equip items, unequip them, drop them, pick them back up, and whatnot. But now, if you get in a vehicle, the vehicle actually has its own inventory. You can see it's not there when I'm not in it, and it is when I'm in it. And I can actually add items to this inventory, leave, do something, come back, and they'll still be in there. And in fact, let's say another player comes along and steals my vehicle. They have access to the same items that they left in there. So items are now synced throughout the server as long as that inventory is set to sync items. And yeah, next thing I wanted to show off was this new vehicle system. Unity's whole wheel system actually made it extremely easy to implement vehicles. There are some issues with interiors of the vehicles, as you can see, but generally they work pretty well. There's a lot of understeer. Oh my god, I need to correct some of the traction values, but yeah, new vehicles. Last but certainly not least, I wanted to talk about this awesome new procedural world generation algorithm. If you've seen my videos about my previous game Xenoplanet, you may recognize something similar from that game. This algorithm is based on the algorithm from that game, but there are some pretty crucial changes. The first of these changes is the new biome system. Xenoplanet's procedural generation algorithm didn't really have that many unique biomes, and it was really difficult to add new biomes, as you had to go into the code and change a bunch of if statements. However, this new biome system is extremely designer friendly, with both small and big changes being very easy to make. The other major difference is that this procedural generation algorithm is entirely deterministic, meaning that with the same starting seed, you'll always get the exact same world. This is really important for syncing the world across multiplayer, as I only have to communicate one number to each of the clients, and they can all generate their own copy of the exact same world. Okay, so let's just jump right into it, and I'll show you some examples of these changes and why I think they're so cool. To show you guys this new biome system and what I think is so cool about it, I'm going to do something similar to what I did with the item spawner and just do a live commentary of me using the tool to make a new biome. So right here you can see there's a couple different biomes, like this very grassy biome, this dry grass biome, this rocky biome, this wasteland biome, and this desert biome. And if we zoom in here, one thing I don't really like about this current setup is that the transition between the desert and the dry wasteland biome is kind of harsh, and it would be kind of nice if there's a biome in between these two to blend them a little better. The other thing I don't really like is that I kind of wish there was more of these dry biomes and less of these grassy biomes, as I want this world to be just a little more wastelandy. So yeah, let's add a new biome and make some of those changes. To add a biome, the first thing we have to do is just create a new biome scriptable object. I'm going to give this a name, desert semi-waste, because it's going to be in between desert and desert waste. And in order to put this biome in between those two biomes, I'm going to set these three values up here to be in between the values of these two biomes. So desert is 10, 0, 20, and desert waste is 15, 0, 70. So I'm going to set this one to 15, 0, 45. I think that should be good. The next thing I need to do is assign a tree group to this biome so that it knows what trees to place in the biome. I'm just going to give it the dead tree group. And then two more things we need to do. Here in the terrain manager, we need to add this biome to the list of biomes. So I'm going to add desert semi-waste. And then here in the terrain chunk, we need to add a material for this biome. I already found a good one, this ground O2. It's kind of in between the dry clay and the sand pattern. Okay, and then save all that. And let's load a world using these changes. I'm using seed number 2 right now. Okay, keep in mind these textures are still a little rough around the edges, but if we zoom in here, we got exactly what we wanted. There's now a biome that kind of blends these two biomes together, and all I had to do was create that scriptable object and set those values. The next thing I'm kind of noticing is that I kind of want a little bit more of this desert, and like I said, I'd like the desert biomes to kind of encroach on the wet biomes a little more. So let's just edit some of the values and see if we can make that happen. So here in the biomes, for the 3 desert biomes, I'm just going to set this moisture value a little higher, maybe to something like 20. The other thing I wanted was more desert, and right now what's stopping more desert from being generated is this desert semi-waste biome, which has a strangeness of 45. So if we just set this a little higher and then set the strangeness of the desert a little higher, we should get more desert. So now let's reload the world, use the same seed, and let's see what's changed. Okay, and here's the new world with those changes. You can see we are getting just a little bit more desert biome in these areas, and it's hard to tell, but it does seem like the dry biomes have encroached just a little bit more into the wet biomes like I wanted. I think this area down here used to be more wet, and up here. But yeah, you can see just how easy it is to make changes to these biomes. Okay, now let's move on to an example of the world being synced across multiplayer. Okay, we're way over 10 minutes already, so I'm just going to go over this last point very quickly. I just wanted to show off that these worlds are in fact exactly the same for each player. So here I am as one player. I'm going to stand in this bush, and you can see there's 2 bushes over here, and 1, 2, 3, 4 trees, and then some walls over there. Switch to the second player, and I'm standing in a bush. It's 2 bushes, 4 trees, and some walls. If I jump on this wall as this player, switch over, you can see this guy standing on a wall. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm pretty proud of this solution. Essentially, each player just starts with the same seed, generates a massive set of pseudo-random numbers that represent everything from the height of the terrain to the types of trees that spawn to the location of the trees that spawn. And all I have to communicate over the internet is what that seed is, and every client is able to generate the exact same world on their own. There's a little bit of stuff I'm glossing over here, but we don't really have time, and that's essentially the big idea. So yeah. Also, unfortunately, we don't have time to go over these tree groups that I use to spawn and render all these trees, or the landmark blending scripts, but I'm happy with what we did get to go over today. I'm sorry there wasn't as much gameplay this week. I didn't get to do that much playtesting with my friends, but I plan on doing a lot more next week. I'm also thinking about just uploading the raw videos of me and my friends playtesting in case anybody would be interested in that. So let me know if you want to see those. I'll see you guys next week. Peace out, and go do what makes you happy. Bye.